XB-36 Peacemaker, the bomber with a wingspan so huge it practically had its own area code. Built back when crossing an ocean still felt like serious protection. This beast could fly intercontinental distances and packed a bomb bay you could legitimately fit a small apartment in. Started with 6 pusher props, then they bolted on 4 jet pods for that legendary 6-turning, 4-burning setup. The specs are insane. Payload that made gravity look weak, altitude high enough to make fighter pilots think twice. But here's the thing, myth doesn't always match reality. It was painfully slow, a nightmare to keep running, and never actually dropped a single bomb in anger. So what was it really for? Buying time, holding down the fort until the next generation of faster, deadlier stuff showed up. A giant that didn't win wars, it just kept the game going while the future got its act together. Turns out the loudest long-range threat in the sky came with propellers chomping at the sound barrier. Tu-95 Bear! The bomber that literally snarls at the sound barrier and makes radar operators nervous. 4 NK-12 turboprops spinning contra-rotating props so ridiculously fast, the blade tips hit transonic speeds, basically turning air into rolling thunder. It's not trying to look pretty, and it definitely isn't hiding. It's a flying missile platform with legs long enough to cross continents, hauling standoff weapons so the plane never has to get anywhere near what it's hitting. The myth? Too slow to make it. The reality? Don't worry about chasing the truck. Worry about what it's launching. Loud as hell, impossible to miss, and still doing its job because it strikes from way outside your reach. A leftover from another era? Nah, more like a ticking clock of deterrence that just kept going, generation after generation. But staying around is one thing. Outliving entire empires? That's something else entirely. B-52 Stratofortress! The buff. Big, ugly, and somehow immortal. Rolled out in the 50s and still hauling over 30 tons of please reconsider across oceans and through decades. Wings that look like highway overpasses. Endurance that just won't quit. The secret? Altitude, range, and standoff capability. Slinging cruise missiles from so far away the target only hears about the bomber through whispers. People keep saying it's obsolete. Meanwhile, new avionics, electronic warfare upgrades, fresh engines, basically extending the warranty on intimidation indefinitely. The airframe doesn't slice through air. It makes deals with gravity and usually comes out on top. It's not sneaky, it's not quick, but it's dependable, which turns out to be way scarier than being trendy. This thing isn't heading for retirement. It's re-upping through the 2050s. But while the buff aged like a glacier strapped with missiles, the Soviets went a different route. M43M Bison! A bomber so massive it looked like it needed extra room just to taxi. Built in a rush, promising intercontinental range with 4 huge turbojets and wings that looked like flattened thunder. The catch? Those engines guzzled fuel like crazy, and the range just couldn't back up the hype. But here's where the Bison earned its keep, through pure theater. Back in 1955, they flew the same planes past the reviewing stand over and over, selling the world on a bomber fleet that didn't actually exist. The upgraded 3M came later, tougher, cleaner, but by then the strategy had shifted. The Tu-95 just did the job better. Most Bisons ended up as tankers and test birds, living way longer than their original reputation. It wasn't the giant that won the game. It was the giant that made everyone else start counting giants. And when just counting wasn't cutting it anymore, somebody decided to try outrunning the future instead. XB-70 Valkyrie, a white-hot spear built to outrun whatever was chasing it. Designed to hit Mach 3 at 70,000 feet. Wearing heat like battle armor, stainless steel honeycomb skin stretched over a delta wing big enough to cover a city block. 6 screaming engines, wingtips that folded down, then compression lift that turned its own shockwaves into extra thrust, basically making the air itself part of the wing. The thinking? Speed makes you untouchable. Then reality showed up in the form of SAMs and ICBMs. Suddenly, altitude and speed weren't get-out-of-jail-free cards anymore. Lost one prototype in a mid-air collision. The other one limped through its days as a test platform, never a bomber. It tried outrunning Tomorrow. Tomorrow just cut it off with missiles. Speed couldn't beat stealth. So the next giant decided to go quiet and vicious. TU-160 Blackjack. So, a white swan that hits like a grand piano dropped from space. The biggest supersonic bomber ever built, with variable sweep wings that fold from wide-open barn doors into slicing razor blades. 4 NK-32 engines launch this aluminum cathedral past Mach 2. Then it settles into cruising mode, quiet menace, with serious legs. Inside, it's not dumping bombs. It's conducting a standoff symphony, launching KH-55, KH-101, 102 cruise missiles from so far away, the crew never even hears the boom they paid for. The myth? Speed equals survival. The truth? Stealth and electronic warfare matter way more. But speed still buys you options, escape routes, launch angles, nightmare scenarios for anyone trying to intercept. Maintenance nightmare? Absolutely. Rare as hell? You bet. Getting upgrades? The TU-160M proves the Swan's learning new tricks. It doesn't pick fights directly. It outsources the violence to its missiles. But if the Blackjack's all about flexing power, the next giant just erased its own shadow entirely. B-2 Spirit! Ah, a shadow with a destination. Pure flying wing that ditched the tail for invisibility magic. Jagged edges, S-shaped engine intakes, and skin that absorbs radar instead of bouncing it back. Fly-by-wire keeps this aerodynamically sketchy triangle from falling out of the sky. Computers doing the heavy lifting while the jet slips between radar frequencies and weather patterns like a ghost. Hall's precision J-dams or the ultimate conversation ender. Released from a bomb bay that barely makes a sound. The myth? Stealth means invisible. The reality? It's all about playing the odds. Careful angles, meticulous planning, and maintenance that eats man-hours in climate-controlled hangars. It doesn't smash through air defenses. It strolls in the front door and flips the lights off on its way through. From ghosts to absolute madness. Up next, a bomber so ridiculously huge it looked like aviation on a dare. Kalinin K-7. The bomber that looked less like an airplane and more like someone filing paperwork for a flying apartment complex. Born in the early 30s, chasing an absolutely wild idea. Haul everything. Troops, artillery, bombs, inside a wing thick enough to literally walk around in. Engines lined up across the leading edge like a row of angry teeth. Gunners scattered throughout the frame like guards manning castle walls. The engineering was insane in the best way. Steel tube framework, massive airfoil, twin booms, bold ideas smashing headfirst into 1930s materials science. The myth? A war-ready monster. The reality? Flutter and vibration kept attacking the tail, and a test flight went sideways, ending the whole thing in wreckage and silence. Never made it to combat, but it proved something important. Going massive without safety margins is just theater with a scheduled crash. And before jets changed the entire game, America took its own swing at a pre-war giant. Douglas XB-19! A hangar-sized what-if that rolled out of a blueprint and straight into legend. Pre-war America wanted range, so they built big. Cathedral-sized wing, bomb bays you could park cars in, and landing gear so tall it practically needed its own introduction. 4 monster radial engines dragged it into the air. Later on, they swapped the engines just to keep milking data from the thing. The myth? A forgotten giant. The truth? It was a flying classroom, feeding intel on structures, fuel systems, landing gear, and everything else to the bombers that actually saw combat. Too slow, too late, too massive for wartime reality. But it taught the aircraft industry how to think really, really big. It didn't win any wars. It educated the machines that did. Giants get old. Strategy evolves. Deterrence? That sticks around. The weapons changed. The craziness didn't. See the next video. SM-64 Navajo, America's first real shot at an intercontinental cruise missile. A ramjet-powered dart designed to cruise at Mach 2+ and cross continents. Pretty ambitious setup. Rocket boosters kick it up to speed. If you've made it this far, subscribe, like, and turn on notifications for our channel. Tell me, which bomber would you take grocery shopping? And how many parking spaces would it invade upon landing?